Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. On behalf of all of us behind the scenes here at ForSpace, welcome in person or via Zoom to the final presentations of the Alan Shepard Residency. We are coming to you live from Concordia University's ForSpace, located on unceded Indigenous lands in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. As caretakers for the lands and waters we are meeting on, we are grateful to the Kahneka'hagan Nation for their teachings about the earth and our relations. At ForSpace, we work to connect people to the initiatives, research projects, and dialogues happening across the university, so we are pleased to have the opportunity to collaborate with District 3 on this event presenting the final outcomes of the Alan Shepard Summer Residency. We are running this as a meeting, so we welcome your comments via the chat or by a raised hand. It's now my pleasure to pass it over to our university president, Graham Carr. Over to you, Graham.
Thanks very much. Bonjour, bienvenue à vous tous et à vous toutes. It's great to see everybody this afternoon. It was sunny a little while ago. It's a little wild out there right now, but happy to be here and thrilled to be here to celebrate this residency, which is a really big part not only of the life and activity of District 3, but I think a really good expression of what we're trying to accomplish at Concordia in terms of providing students across the university with experiential learning opportunities. And stay tuned, there'll be a big announcement coming on that in the next couple of weeks. Trying to encourage the mixing of people from different disciplines and expanding our partnerships and connections externally as well. And of course, it's particularly meaningful, certainly for me, for Anne, for Xavier, for others, to be celebrating this year's cohort of the Alan Shepard Summer Residency. Does everybody know who Alan Shepard is? So Alan was the president of Concordia University before me, and it's really through his, actually this is a convergence of his vision and his generosity, this residency program. So part of Alan's vision, and one of the reasons we were able to recruit Xavier to Concordia many years ago, was that Alan had a really deep and abiding interest in the innovation space, and in providing students in particular with opportunities to create startups, to get good mentorship, to give them a value added beyond what they were learning in the classroom. And so the creation of District 3 happened as a result of Alan's vision. But this particular residency program exists because of Alan's generosity, through his own personal donation to the university to allow students to benefit from the summer residency. So it's really fantastic to be able to celebrate and to thank Alan in this way. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to join us even virtually because he's traveling at the moment. But I know he's super proud of this program because I spoke to him, I think it was 3 Saturday evenings ago. He's following it really closely. He's really proud, really excited. And so with that, I'm gonna zip it and pass it over to Anne Whitelaw, our provost and VP academic, to share a little bit more about the program. Over to you, Anne.
Thank you, Graham. And yeah, we're really proud of this residency. It's really emblematic of the Concordia's role as a next generation university, a university that develops academic programs and other learning opportunities that are attractive and meaningful to today's forward-looking students, and that has an impact on society. So I'm particularly excited about this iteration of the residency because of its orientation towards arts and culture. So as some of you know, as someone who comes from the fine arts milieu, when I'm not provost, I'm a professor of art history. I'm not a professor of art history very often because the provost gig is a bit all-consuming. But from that background, I know that I know the unique skills that fine art students have, the artists, musicians, designers, performers. They're risk takers, you're risk takers. You look for new and different ways of doing things. you're imaginative, you're creative, and you know how to fail. And failure is really important to be able to move forward in things. So I think that's something that I think is really exciting about this residency. So the kinds of skills that I just described are the kinds of entrepreneurial skills that society needs now. And I'm proud to say that students who have gone through this residency program will be extraordinarily well placed to make a difference in the world. It goes without saying that the cultural sector has been hard hit by the pandemic. But despite huge challenges, artists, musicians, and performers innovated new ways of reaching audiences to live up to Montreal's reputation as an internationally recognized cultural city. Cultural institutions that are with us today recognized today are a major part of building that reputation. And Concordia is proud of the important and fruitful partnerships that we have with all of you. We are all anchor institutions in Montreal, and our collaborations are vital to building strong networks and strong communities. We are very glad and very proud to lend our talent to help solve the sector's pressing challenges, and we're eager to see what all of you have come up with. So I'll end by saying merci beaucoup d'être venu, d'être avec nous, and now let's hear about those projects.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you, Graham. My name is Zachary, and I'm part of the team behind the residency. And I'm here to give you a little peek behind the curtain of the journey of the residents. So the first set of mandates saw each team seriously dive deep on the question of value proposition for some particular component of each organization's operations. As audiences and their modes of consumption are changing, so too do the ways that we create value. We have to change the way that we create value to keep bringing value to these changing audiences. These changing needs often appear in the form of a problem. But if we're just addressing the problem at hand, that's sort of treating the symptom. And so how do we dive deeper? How do we get at the hidden forces behind all of that? How do we get at the causes? And how do we build a comprehensive solution that takes all of these into account? The first mandates were full of firsts. First client relationships, first foray into self-organizing teams, first big conflict. I'm seeing some nodding heads. Putting into practice all new techniques for team relationships, working styles, for innovation. It was a tough trial by fire, but conflict doesn't have to be a scary thing. You've all learned how to use this conflict to turn ideas around and come up with solutions that you couldn't have any other way. And with that, I invite Liz.
In the wake of the pandemic, Pop Montreal was looking for new strategies to predict attendance. This in line with their downsizing efforts for their music festival. Our goal was to reconnect Pop Montreal to their audience. We provided suggestions to shorten the steps to purchase tickets online, as well as a day pass model as a response to the new reality of consumer uncertainty surrounding live events. The main portion of our proposed solutions was focused on social media strategies. To drive audience engagement, we created a music personality quiz, which provides participants with a music persona, a catered playlist, as well as a list of upcoming events for the Pop Montreal lineup. This would increase the knowledge of the Pop Montreal lineup, as well as promote the discovery of lesser-known local artists based on their music preferences. Our second strategy was called Battle of the Bands. This is an initiative where artists would submit videos online on an Instagram story, and Pop Montreal followers would then vote on their favorites. This initiative invites festival goers into the curation process of the festival. Not only does this increase the engagement with Pop Montreal's social media, it also provides direct feedback into their audience. Through these solutions, Pop Montreal is able to reconnect with their audience post-COVID, and predict the attendance rate at a way higher level. Thank you.
So in March of 2021, the FIFA was one of the first to create an online counterpart to a film festival. And they built it on a remarkably limited budget. And it works extremely well this way. They came to us looking to expand past their already loyal customer base, and we wanted to help them recruit new audiences. And to do this, we invented what we call the Nourishment Model. It's sort of initiative in partnership where young artists are contacted by arts.film through their university catalogs and through social media in the form of, documentation challenges.
The documentation challenge had a goal of building a presence on, a presence on TikTok that had something more than just, there's a lot of randomness on there. So we figured that arts.film could connect with their community by having these challenges, asking emerging artists to document their work in progress. And then these microfilms would be shared by the platform, showing that the platform has people behind it who care and who have their backs.
So this would serve to establish arts.film on social media and strengthen their presence in general, and not just adding on to the endless scroll of content that you already find there. And this would also make more meaningful contributions to their online, not to their online, but to their university database contributions. Thank you.
So the MAC's home at Place des Arts is under renovation until 2025. It's relocated in a smaller space at Place Ville-Marie. During this transition, the MAC has limited capacity, both in terms of content and space. This translates into a reduced value proposal for the members. How can we keep the MAC community engaged during this transition? How does that translate in terms of a membership model for the museum? Shane, Sarah, Dave, and I came up with a MAC in your neighborhood model solution. By being partners with local cultural spaces like Maison de la Culture, libraries, and exhibits and pop-up exhibits, the MAC will remain part of Montrealers' everyday lives. It will also create meaningful opportunities to reach out to new audiences. In terms of membership, the Pay What You Can model allows the MAC to meet accessibility and inclusivity goals, especially for price-sensitive communities. It will also help the MAC figure out the perceived value of the membership. On the short term, and during the transition, it will also allow the MAC to experiment before the big reopening in 2025. Thank you.
Thanks very much to our three residence presenters. My name is Mark Weiser. I'm the supervisor of the Strategic Initiatives Portfolio at the Faculty of Fine Arts here. And it has been a real great pleasure for me to collaborate with District 3 and this incredible group of residents from the Faculty of Fine Arts and from John Molson School of Business on this project, this initiative. It has also been our collective great pleasure and honor to welcome within the walls of Concordia leadership and representatives from some of Montreal's most important and impressive cultural institutions. And the access that we had to them provided for incredible richness of exchange and learning, and I think the learning went both ways. So in coming up with how we wanted to present this event, we really wanted to share some of that richness with you, the audience, and with those of you who are tuning in remotely. And so in that spirit, we decided to continue the conversation with mandators from those organizations that we've just been talking about. So without any further ado, I think you're all here. I'd like to welcome some of those people up here. So Jérôme Rossipon, directeur de communication, marketing et partenariat chez le FIFA. Oui, voilà. Marine Godefroy, directrice du marketing et des communications musée de l'art contemporain de Montréal, pardon. And Jessica Berry, public funding coordinator from Pop Montreal. So I'll invite you to share the microphones as you see fit. Now, as Zach introduced, we talked in this first group of mandates, we talked about value propositions. And the topic of value propositions is particularly poignant at this moment in time. Because for the first time in a lot of our professional lives, let's say we've been encountered in the last 2 years with the question of the value of what we do, whether that's live exhibition, live performance, gathering in public spaces. Essentially, the business of cultural workers has been questioned and the value. And so here we are, post-pandemic, still in recovery mode, whether we like it or not. And we find ourselves asking how, and if how should we, or whether, and if we do, how should we return to our old models? And if we're not returning to those old models specifically, what are the ways forward? And how can we redefine that question of value that we offer? And we know, as cultural workers, we know we have value. But it provides sort of an uneven territory when there's a question out there as to what that value is. And so let's dive into a little bit. And if it's okay, Marianne, I'll start with you. Sure. So for the museum, COVID struck at a real kind of interesting, let's say, moment as you were planning a major move into a provisional space at Place du Marie, a much smaller space. And as you're initiating a major facelift on your existing building. And you came to us with a challenge that was all about the museum membership model. You challenged us to reevaluate whether that model is useful for your present and your provisional circumstance, and whether it will continue to be useful in your future. So I wonder if you could just expand on that a little bit and tell us why this has become and why it continues to be an important question as we gradually move out of the health emergency.
Well, traditionally, museums are all about their membership and cultivate it with great care. But these memberships were mostly based on access and priority access to events that no longer existed. So rethinking the value proposition was definitely, it wasn't even something that we have the luxury of avoiding. The question being now, have people's habits changed? And we notice that that is the case, whether it's family activities at the museum, whether it's how they attend exhibits, whether, and it's really also about how they consume the content that we put out. Everybody was in front of a screen for 2.5 years, which actually validated a lot of the initiatives that we put together for the web. But it poses a whole bunch of new questions about how we attract, how we call back our usual audiences, how we attract people who discovered us on the web during the whole binge that we had during 2 years, and how do we get them to make the jump from looking at our content on the web and actually coming to the exhibits and the events at the museum. We haven't really figured out, we don't have an answer yet. There's actually schools of thought that are questioning the validity of having a membership at all today. So we're looking at that today for 2025. We have the luxury, actually, the opportunity in this sort of weird timing to try out a whole bunch of different things and to see what's going to stick. The fact that we're in a new space, in a smaller space with that's entirely dedicated to one exhibit, actually, it gives us a real sort of a lab to do things. And I think that it's going to help us very much more sort of be closer to our audiences and not just be a museum for tourists, but actually build a community around the museum. Museums were really sort of passive things, right? Build it and they will come. That was pretty much the mantra. I don't think that works really for anything anymore. And I think museums have to rethink that in a very big way. So membership is the start of a bigger conversation, really.
Absolutely. And I think, to me, the question of membership, I know in one of my past lives, I encountered a similar question about concert subscriptions and whether that was a model that we could count on, whereas it was a really important model in the past. You also mentioned your at-home community, your core community versus sort of the tourist crowd, and your membership is really about that core community, right?
Absolutely.
And I think it was interesting for me, at least, to watch the residents grapple with questions of, if your entire core membership were to come to the MAC in your present circumstances, would they even fit? Could you even accommodate them all? And therefore, what are you selling them? Is it a sort of belonging? Is it a sort of a cultural affiliation?
I think that it is a cultural affiliation. A visit to a museum is supporting your local culture, right, and your local cultural ecosystem. So I think that when you're being a member is really sort of a distinction that says, I support culture. Being a member of a museum, of any kind of cultural grouping, says that. And I think it's a really important thing. Culture is like democracy. If you don't feed it, if you don't take care of it, it's going to go away and it's going to leave a really gaping hole. So I think it's something that everyone needs to be aware of as well.
That's interesting. I'm going to pass it over to Jessica now. Jessica, at Pop Montreal, you also faced a major challenge to your business, which is, to put it really mildly, right? In that the entire core of your business, which is live performance, was no longer permitted during a significant period of time. So I wonder if you could just describe a little bit what that was like from the inside of an institution like that, when the rug got pulled out from under you, what kind of challenges that created, and then what challenges are you continuing to face as we gradually sort of claw our way out of that situation?
Sure. I think that we were pretty lucky, actually, because we are a really small organization. So we were able to be really adaptable from the very beginning. So I think the first thing that we started doing when things shut down is we were doing these balcony sessions where we'd invite a performer to come on our roof and we would live stream it. And if you were in the neighborhood, you could come out and hear it. And we were sort of thinking about, okay, how do we use alternate spaces? How do we scale things down? How do we try to still connect artists and audiences at this time? So over, I guess we've done, 2 fully hybrid festivals at this point. So we've had a mixture of smaller scale events and live streaming those to audiences at home. And we've also made some investments in outdoor spaces. So we have a new sort of larger outdoor space in the Myland that we've been working with the city to sort of become more of a permanent thing and more of a permanent cultural hub, which has been really good to have a safer space to do some of these sort of larger, medium-sized events throughout. But yeah, it caused a lot of problems. In terms of sponsorship, in terms of ticket sale revenue, all of those streams were essentially gone, and public funding became really, really important. Thankfully, at all levels of government, there were a lot of opportunities for organizations that wanted to try different things, that wanted to go digital, that wanted to do stuff outside in public space. So really, that's been sort of the thing that's kept us afloat. Going forward, that's not going to be the case forever. So we're gradually looking at how we build back those other revenue streams and really kind of focusing now on the concept of degrowth. I think a lot of festivals in Canada are thinking about this, is how do we scale back? How do we focus on the basics? How do we do what we do well even better? And how do we think about things like the role of cultural institutions in terms of the climate emergency? How do we think about equity and, supporting artists so that being a musician is a career choice that could be sustainable? How do we support emerging artists? These are always questions that we've asked, but I think we've really, really come back to those and trying to figure out how to invest more in those areas, which is really, I think, some of the suggestions that were brought forth by the residents, sort of look at the things that we're already doing and help us sort of improve on them.
So how to streamline, I think it's so interesting, the word degrowth. For me, that sticks out because it's almost a bad word in many different areas, even in universities, if I dare say, right? We have a logic that says, if you're doing good, you should get bigger. And it's so interesting that as an organization, you're entertaining the notion of degrowth and everything that comes with it, which is, as you've described, a refining, right, of what you do. So that's super interesting.
We had to cut back so much, so now we're at a place where it's like we can make really intentional choices about what gets bigger or what comes back at this stage.
Yeah, super interesting. Thank you. Jérôme, on va passer le micro. Vous êtes parmi des institutions, le FIFA, qui ont réagi à l'urgence sanitaire avec des nouvelles initiatives audacieuses. Puis c'est pas tout le monde qui a fait ça. Donc vous avez créé, comme on a eu expliqué tantôt, une nouvelle plateforme de streaming pour exploiter votre contenu. Donc, pouvez-vous nous raconter un peu c'est quoi Art.film et pourquoi dans l'ère post-Covid que nous approchons, pourquoi est-ce que c'est important pour vous de garder cette initiative, étant donné que c'était une réaction à une urgence?
I'll be the French part of this. Yeah. Déjà parce que ça répond à une de nos missions qui est de démocratiser l'art et de rendre l'art accessible en fait. Donc c'était un peu naturel qu'on ait un pendant en ligne. Oui. Ensuite parce que, donc, comme tu le dis, on a été comme un des premiers festivals en Amérique du Nord, étant donné qu'on est très tôt dans l'année, donc à devoir faire le pas en fait en ligne. On avait la chance en fait d'avoir une infrastructure qui nous a permis de faire ce switch-là. Donc ça a d'abord, comme vous le disiez, ça a répondu comme à une urgence. Mais en fait, cette urgence a en fait juste mis davantage en écho quelque chose qu'on sentait sur une transformation en fait de l'événementiel. Après, peut-être la différence avec Pop Montréal, c'est que il y a déjà en fait beaucoup de festivals de films qui ont un pendant en fait en ligne, donc c'était d'autant plus naturel en fait pour nous d'avoir cette déclinaison là. Puis ensuite tout s'est enclenché naturellement, comme je dis, pour nous, vu que notre mission est de démocratiser une niche en fait qui est donc le film sur l'art. Surtout que le festival se place comme une référence en fait dans le monde, étant donné qu'on est le plus gros festival de films sur l'art au monde en termes de quantité et d'expertise, parce qu'il existe depuis 40 ans. Donc c'était comme, disons, comme quelque chose de vraiment un prolongement en fait de notre mission et de tout ce qu'on pouvait offrir en fait à nos festivaliers. Après, comme on l'exposait, on en parle, puis tout le monde est conscient de ça, l'industrie, le monde du festival a considérablement changé, donc il n'y a pas vraiment le plan d'affaires est totalement à repenser. Donc ce qui est compliqué pour nous, puis je pense que ça les étudiants l'ont bien compris, c'est qu'on a les pieds dans deux choses assez différentes en fait. Un monde du festival qui est en reconstruction, avec la notion de décroissance effectivement qui est très importante, mais et aussi donc de devoir s'adapter à un marché qui pour le coup qui n'est pas en décroissance, qui est le marché du en ligne en fait et du streaming online, et qui pour le coup demande des moyens et demande beaucoup de moyens en fait. Donc nous, ça c'était puis peut-être que je réponds déjà peut-être à l'autre point de la discussion, mais c'est notre challenge en fait dans cette résidence, c'était aussi de faire comprendre aux étudiants que notre réalité en tant que petite organisation était touchée comme un marché qui demandait beaucoup en fait en termes de ressources, de temps et d'argent. Donc voilà. Après, c'est à peu près ça. Le mandat est vraiment très similaire en fait au festival. Là, la chose est que, et c'était pour ça qu'on était venu en fait à cette résidence, c'était de vraiment grossir le fanbase en fait de des festivaliers à toucher d'autres personnes qui n'ont pas la possibilité d'être à Montréal ou de venir nous voir en présentiel au festival. Et la difficulté dans tout ça, c'est de trouver du temps dans l'année, en fait, à côté de l'organisation d'un événement qui a lieu à date X, de devoir tout le long de l'année, en fait, grossir notre catalogue en ligne et parler à une population et un public qui ne nous connaît pas forcément et qui n'ont peut-être même pas intérêt à venir nous voir au festival, en fait, mais qui sont intéressés par le contenu qui est le film sur l'art. Donc, en gros, c'est ça.
Ouais, c'est ça. Merci beaucoup. Donc, I'm hearing development of new audiences. I'm hearing how to retain your own home core audience. And I'm also hearing a lot about new modes of consumption and how to adapt to those. It strikes me as perfect cases to bring to university with a bunch of current students and recent graduates who are, in many cases, those who are initiating new modes of consumption. So I hope it was interesting for you to work with them, but I'm getting the roll it along sign. So we're going to continue in the same format. I'll welcome Zach back to introduce the next group of mandates, and thanks very much.
All right. So after this intangible, nebulous question of value, what is the value proposition? The second set of mandates really honed in on the extremely tangible question of space. What does space mean to these institutions, and what future value can these spaces bring to them? This second set of mandates got our residents physically out into the city, into these institutions' headquarters, and the fieldwork, I think, was energizing for everyone. But without architectural expertise on the team, this mandate really pushed the residents outside of their comfort zones. You've all learned to see your perspectives as truly valuable and how to apply them to develop rich space solutions, even when your background and expertise comes from somewhere completely different. Coming together to build these solutions, space becomes not just about four walls, but about how you can hold space within any built environment. So with that, I invite Katie to tell us more.
L'Espace ONF is a 2,000 square foot space in the NFB's new headquarters. The National Film Board asked us how we could turn this location into a multifunctional hybrid meeting point, merging together the whole of Canada. We prioritized cultivating a strong identity for the space, leaning on its film set appearance and modular nature. Every event in L'Espace ONF should be designed with the approach that participants are working on the production of a film. The filmmaking artifacts housed in the space can be reproduced in a digital gallery for viewers outside of Montreal. A virtual tour also offers online visitors a way to experience the space remotely and interact with multimedia elements such as music, videos, and animations. These solutions all look at finding ways of sharing the NFB's legacy in a multi-dimensional way. Our programming strategies honor the space's semi-open capabilities and maximizes the benefits for artists, participants, and curators. One of our installation strategies, called the Maison Seine Library, is filled with paper artifacts, creating a more permanent fixture in the space, encouraging visitors to return. Our other proposed program, ONF Presents, targets digital audiences with podcasts, video features, and streaming of workshops and other events. Our vision for the space is one that looks at the NFB's analog history in a digital context, paying tribute to its filmography. Thank you.
In 2025, the MAC will be opening its doors to its newly renovated museum in Place des Arts. With that comes a question. How can the MAC's boutique and cafe stand out amongst competitors? our solution, the tire change model, where in the winter, the space would be optimized for locals, and in the summer would be optimized for tourists. In the winter, the space would act as a cozy getaway from the harsh, cold Montreal winter, and would serve macarons that would come in different flavors every month to encourage locals to revisit the space, as well as serve designer coffee, which would have art pieces printed onto the foam of the coffee to create Instagrammable moments that could be shared on social media. Then, in the summer, the furniture would be moved outside to accommodate higher foot traffic, and exhibit spotlights would be held to educate visitors on exhibits that are currently being held at the MAC and encourage them to purchase tickets. Finally, in both the winter and the summer, when a visitor were to come, enjoying their coffee and their macaron, they would sit down and soon realize that the couch that they're sitting on, the lamp that's illuminating the book that they're reading, and the table on which they place their bag are all available for sale on the MAC's online retail website. We believe that this solution will not only help support the MAC's business operations, but help the community and align with the MAC's vision of accessibility. Thank you.
Place des Arts tasked us with finding a purpose for Espace Sainte-Catherine, a public space immediately accessible from the street. In this space, we showcase Place des Arts' unique identity as an amplifier of the arts. Accommodating to the two types of visitors, the general public and performance attendees, we designed seating for resting during the day and to function as a de facto lobby in the evening or before shows. It can also be visited by students or professionals in need of a calm space to rest during the work week. To complement the seating, our solution included an interactive wall with a small stage in front. Here, visitors can engage with the art on the screen and become the performers of Place des Arts. Around the interactive wall would be a living wall made of plants and other greenery. This is a unique feature that adds a much-needed breath of fresh air to the Quartier du Spectacle. This new space serves all members of the community. It's a public space for tourists to rest and enjoy art, and the inclusion of a flexible workshop space increases involvement in Montreal's art scene. We created a space unlike any other, with greenery, multifunctionality, and technology that invites visitors to instinctively engage with the space as more than just passerbys. Thank you.
Thanks very much for your presentations. So continuing our pattern, I'm going to invite some guests up to join me. So Yael Filipovic, directrice éducation et engagement au Musée d'art contemporain. Yael. On a Clotilde Cardinal, directrice de la programmation de la Place des Arts, à la Place des Arts. Et online, live from Kamouraska, we have André Picard, from directeur général création et innovation ONF. There he is. So I'll just start with a couple of comments. I thought this was such an interesting mandate, and it came upon us by total coincidence after talking with you, the mandators, and sort of having a number of conversations about what are the problems you're facing now. And it happened that 3 of our major cultural institutions were at this moment facing issues of how to deal with space, how to create a public-private space. And it also just so happened that these 3 organizations were placed sort of in a triangle shape around Place des Festivals. So at the northwest corner, we have the brand new building of the ONF. At the southeast corner, we have the construction site for the new MAC. And then just a hop over, we have Place des Arts, the public spaces that consist of multifunction spaces, hallways, and sort of foyers of the various theaters that exist there. So all this together and surrounding this really interesting public space where we have such a vibrant concert life, for instance, in Francophonie, Jazz Fest, and all that, it presents actually a really complex mix of types of space. We have indoor, outdoor, public, private, multifunction, dedicated use. And so the challenge becomes, how do you put across brand identity of your institution while still participating in an ecosystem? How do you entice people in and give them a taste of what you offer as an organization without compromising on ticket sales? And there are particular challenges for Place des Arts, as we'll hear, as a landlord, in terms of how to approach that challenge. So for me, this was a lot of fun to think through, and I had a lot of fun watching the groups work through these as well. Clotilde, je pense que je vais commencer avec vous, si vous me permettez. Décrivez-nous un peu l'histoire de la Place des Arts, brièvement, et comment cette histoire-là, vos expansions, vos transformations depuis l'ouverture, comment ça crée des défis quand ça vient à créer des espaces qui sont unifiés, qui donnent un sens d'identité commune?
Alors, brièvement, pour l'histoire de la Place des Arts, c'est un bâtiment énorme de 19 millions de pieds carrés, quelque chose comme ça, qui a commencé avec la construction en 63 d'une grande salle de 3000 sièges. Après ça, l'exposition universelle de Montréal en 67 a permis l'érection d'un autre bâtiment dans lequel il y a 3 autres théâtres. Puis après, avec le déménagement de la Cité du Havre, du Musée d'art contemporain, on a créé une autre salle. Et finalement, en 2011, avec l'érection sur l'esplanade de la nouvelle salle de concert Maison symphonique de Montréal, on a rajouté un nouveau building. Donc, les bâtiments, les liens entre ces différents espaces ne sont pas nécessairement organiques, n'ont pas été faits à la même période par les mêmes architectes et avec une vision commune. Donc ça, c'est déjà un premier défi, non sans dire qu'il y a un stationnement à la Place des Arts souterrain et une esplanade qui n'est pas une vraie place publique, en fait, qui est une place publique, mais qui est surtout un toit. Parce que c'est un autre enjeu de travailler une place publique que de travailler un toit. Alors voilà. J'aime beaucoup ce que tu as dit, Marc, quand tu dis facing issues. En fait, je pense que la vision présente, c'est justement de faire face à la ville et non pas dos à la cité. Je veux juste prendre appui sur le fait que pour avoir fait une analyse documentée quand je suis arrivée il y a quelques années, de nombreux centres culturels comme les nôtres qui gèrent des espaces publics. Je pense à des esplanades à Singapour, je pense à Kennedy Center à Washington, Music Center à Los Angeles, je pense à South Bank Center à Londres. Donc, ces centres-là ont toutes fait des erreurs que, quand on les a questionnés, on ne voulait pas refaire. Et essentiellement, c'est de travailler ces espaces-là pour les rendre le plus accueillants possible à des clientèles non traditionnellement associées aux arts. Donc, de ne pas essayer de les transformer à tout prix en acheteurs de billets. Du coup, ça amène un engagement, une vision citoyenne complètement différente, des budgets, du fonctionnement et surtout une vraie vision de développement, de tendre la main à différentes communautés. Donc, le mandat qu'on a donné au groupe que je félicite, et j'en ai parlé avec la PDG hier, à qui j'ai présenté votre travail, était absolument enchantée. Donc, bravo. Donc, ce que je voulais vous dire, c'est qu'on leur a donné finalement, comme c'est très grand, un espace qu'on a créé à la va-vite pendant la pandémie, à la faveur du départ de la boutique du MAC qui vivait son projet de modernisation et à la faveur du départ aussi d'une entreprise qui n'avait rien à voir avec notre core business, qui était une bijouterie. Donc, on a créé du vide pour faire un pas de recul et se dire comment ce vide peut venir appuyer notre stratégie d'unification. En fait, on n'en a pas une, mais eux ont des belles idées. Et comment on peut faire de ce lieu un lieu qui appuie la vision, c'est-à-dire celle de tendre la main à la communauté et de ne pas être qu'un lieu par lequel les gens passent. Il faut comprendre aussi que chacune de nos salles est fermée. Donc, on peut avoir un sentiment, si on y va là à 3 heures du matin, de centre d'achat. C'est très désagréable. Mais c'est complètement à l'inverse de ce qu'on veut créer, c'est-à-dire d'être un lieu démocratisé, ouvert à une population qui, entre 1963, l'ouverture, et aujourd'hui, presque 60 ans plus tard, s'est considérablement diversifié. Je vous apprends rien en vous disant que Montréal a un tissu socioculturel complètement transformé de celui des années 60. Et puis, non sans dire aussi qu'on a une vision de diversité, équité, inclusion qui vient désormais aussi transformer un peu la façon dont on travaille avec les contenus ainsi que les parties prenantes.
Donc, en somme, c'est complexe.
It's complex. So, do you want me to resume or you're gonna make it?
I'm gonna pass it on to André right now. Speaking of institutions that have a long history, a long built history in Montreal, we have the National Film Board. I think André, he's right behind me as well too, for anyone who wants to not turn around. It was an exciting moment, I think, for those of us who love the ON. I say ONF and NFB interchangeably. I hope that's not confusing. But those of us who love the NFB, it was exciting when we realized that a building was going up at Place des Arts, because it was not necessarily the most accessible or, let's say, welcoming place that you had before, which is just north of the 40. And it's also exciting to learn that in the plans for this building, you actually imagined a space that would be open to the public. But that didn't come without its challenges, of course. And part of the mandate that you brought to our residents was, or part of the problem you brought, was that NFB has a national mandate across the country. And so how does a physical space in downtown Montreal actually accomplish a national mandate? How do we bring the whole country into this little space, or virtually, or however? So can you tell us a little bit about the thinking that went in behind that?
Yeah, well, maybe like Place des Arts to start with, and thanks for inviting me. And I'm not DG Création Innovation. I'm Principal Director of Partnerships and Business Development. The Director General is Julie Roy. And so a little bit of history is the NFB's public presence has always been outside of its walls. From its founding in Ottawa and its building headquarters there for 25 years, it's been in cinemas, public places, in church basements, in cinematheques. At one point, the NFB had more projectionists than they had filmmakers, and that's including directors, DOPs, editors. So the history of the organization is to show our work to the public through different platforms outside of our walls. And this is before mobility and the internet. And we weren't in a good location for any part of our business, where it's the accessibility by creators. We were between two car dealerships. And it was the old model of building where there's the maximum space. When we were built in the 50s, there were a few farms and some cows up there. So this move is really a dramatic change and brings us into the heartbeat of downtown Montreal at the Place des Festivals. And by the way, it dramatically reduced our carbon footprint, because now a lot of employees are walking to work, taking the bus, the subway, their bicycles. It's all set up in the basement, and other forms of public transport. Very little private transport. So that's an indirect benefit. The NFB has also wanted historically to have its own channels for the same reason, to control its public presence and interactions. So from the very start, since we were occupying the ground floor of l'Îlot Balmoral and the next 4 stories, including the mezzanine, it was evident that we would have a public space. But it is so different to have this presence that the other people at the table, that's their daily life, their daily bread. For us, it's completely new. So it's a change of culture. It's an evolution in our own kind of genetic makeup, not only for the programming, but also for its operation, whether it's technological or hosting. And I think the team did well in focusing, and I like the analogy from the analog to the digital. But even before we thought of our national presence, we're now going through the run through, because nothing happened. I think we planned 4 or 5 openings during COVID and had to cancel them every single time. We haven't even officially inaugurated our new building. But we have some clues. When we closed up at Côte de Liesse, we had lineups all around the block, and they're built big blocks up there to visit the NFB during its final days. And I've personally guided some groups and some individuals within this little creative lab within 4 stories of a tower, and people are fascinated about the work that's going on there. So it's creating a whole new way of working internally with our teams, because they find there a new platform to show their works during the creative process or the production process, which is also something the team worked on in terms of creating a direct window to that. And we expect to be going through that process for at least another year of testing. Some people have come and hosted events in the cinema, the Alan Shepard cinema that's right upstairs, and have had a cocktail afterwards in our public space. But we're in the baby steps at the initiation. So this was perfect timing to get the proposals that we got. But it's a completely different experience for us. It's completely new to actually have welcoming the public, creating accessibility programs, managing that vitrine, the window, that huge space that people walk by all the time and don't definitely identify with us, though we've put some artifacts of past films and a map of Canada and our presence within Canada.
Thanks, Andre. I think it strikes me that with the group of you mandators who are all thinking of these public spaces, and you all came to us with similar ideas. Like, I want to create a space that says my brand, but that welcomes anyone, that accommodates different levels of engagement. And the fact that you're all, I mean, I don't know, will they all launch in the same year? It seems like there's some sort of ecological, thinking that could happen there, and it's fun for us to have you all at the table. I want to bring you into the conversation, Yael Filipovic. Your old building, or the building that is currently being revamped at Place des Arts, presented some unique challenges, not least of which is, where is the front door? Being a big question that comes up a lot, right? How does the planning for the new building, it's not just a facade, it's a whole sort of revamp. How does that address some of the many challenges that you had as an organization before?
Yeah, what's exciting about the new building is it allows us to really think about the public path.
I'm not sure if it's or take Clotilde's.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. It's allowed us to really think about the role of the public, the visitor, and how to ensure we're moving past the idea that it is a purely consumption model. So the idea that they just come in to see the art and they're going to leave, and that's it. That's all that happened. That's the exchange. And so how do we create a space that is what I call the agora of the 21st century, where there's actually debate, there's conversation, there's exchange, there's back and forth, and someone can stay for as long or as little as they like. So creating those spaces in the museum, the mandate was one of the many spaces where we're thinking that through. And it's obviously very hard for us, as we always want to put the art first and foremost, but then how do you balance that with thinking through your public and their needs, and how do you get them to enjoy the spaces with us? The ultimate goal is that people would want to come to our cafe store as much as they want to come to the museum, and that they want to do both, is where we'd love to head to. And I think the team came up with some really great ideas for us to think through. And how do we think through the needs of all the different publics as well? We were talking to tourists, but the locals as well. So this idea of the visitor path is huge in terms of how we rethink museums and the role of the visitor in the location of a cultural space.
Thank you. I want to give Clotilde one more chance, because we really just talked about the history and the challenge of Place des Arts, but you also were presented with a pretty interesting proposal, and as you mentioned, it was well received. Is there one, or what interested you most about what the residents brought to you in terms of a proposal?
I think they have really resolved the challenge and proposing us, something versatile and with a foot in the modernity somehow, with these benches, because with the benches, as Erin mentioned, invite people to sit and just to enjoy the place, and it opens also the possibility to welcome these people, and not only the ticket buyers and the spectator who usually go to Place des Arts during the evening, So to welcome these people during the day, so it could be students, it could be resident people around, etc., etc. Et alors, si ta question, c'est que je crois que la vision, c'est de tous les centres culturels comme les nôtres qui ne seront pas pertinents et inclusifs au 21e siècle ne pourront pas traverser le challenge qui est le nôtre, qui est celui de remettre en relation les gens avec les arts et le pouvoir des arts de transformation que ça distille. Et j'en ai parlé avec les étudiants. Nous avons fait un exercice de branding il y a quelques années sur spécifiquement l'offre culturelle gratuite. Et le thème, le nom du programme, c'est le programme L'art en soi, The Art Within You. So everything we developed, activity we conceive has this purpose, meaning we try to help anyone discovering in himself, herself, what he has, who is the artist in itself, inside, and comment il peut découvrir ce potentiel-là. Donc, je ne sais pas si je réponds à ta question, mais quand j'ai vu leur proposition, l'art en soi, je voyais ces bancs, cette interactivité-là, cette possibilité de faire du coworking, l'identification de Place des Arts aussi, ce côté ouverture vers soi, mais ouverture vers les autres. Ils ont tenu compte aussi de ce qu'il y a une œuvre majeure dans le centre, une œuvre de Pierre Grange. Donc, excuse-moi, je suis bavarde. Too much?
Ça va. Non.
Okay. Sorry, I took the reins, so now I'm taking this time to dry myself a little bit.
But I think it's so interesting what you point out that you really like the benches, and it strikes me as funny that and you've also used the word inclusive, accessible a lot, and that something as simple as seating in a public space can transform it so completely and actually welcome the community in, and we don't realize the extent to which a lack of seating, on the other hand, in public space can actually be really unwelcoming. So I think, it's funny. I guess I just wanted to point out that sometimes it's the simple things that make a difference, right?
And this simple idea of bringing nature and greenery in the Place des Arts and in a Nordic city like Montreal is just, so simple, but so, low-hanging fruit that I loved. Voilà.
Well, thank you all for your participation in this little mini panel. We're going to move on. I think I'm a little late already, so thanks so much.
All right. So, after coming to understand how these spaces can be used to engage audiences in new ways, the third set of mandates saw residents taking on the question of user experience. How do layouts and interactions and features change a relationship between the audience and the content, or even the relationship between the audience and the organization itself? Now, at the end of the residency, you've each grown into your value as an external consultant. You're coming to the table with your mandators as an equal, and you're holding that confidence even when they challenge your solutions. And in turn, you're getting bolder. You're challenging the mandates themselves to come to solutions you can really get behind. So with that, Katarina will tell us more.
So new global players, new business models, and new technologies are all disrupting the way that we consume media. The audience is fragmented now. Fast channels are free, ad-supported streaming services, or TV rather, and they're on a quick and steady rise. Legacy cultural institutions have to respond with innovative strategies. The NFB asked us if their content and their audience would be suitable for a fast channel. We agree that it is, but it needs to be seen as an opportunity to learn more about your audience, but also to monetize your content. The channel that we envisioned and we titled Echo NFB bridges the gap between viewers and the content creators. And this would be done by inviting artists and collaboration in programming. open call invitations through social media or through residency programs, would recruit emerging artists to curate the NFB's catalog. Well-curated channels are paramount to monetizing content, and that may not give them as much commercial value by themselves, but they're also not enough to ensure discoverability on its own. Partnerships with hardware companies or manufacturers like Samsung, for example, would encourage discoverability and would provide the best opportunities for understanding audience fragmentation. Third-party cookies are crumbling. First-party data is the future of marketing, a big value associated with fast channels. Samsung is the largest source of first-party data in the market and has successfully partnered with public institutions in the past. In sharing their library of content and in making these important relationships and partnerships, the National Film Board can become a household name once more. Thank you.
The MAC tasked us with a large question. What is the future of the museum website in 2025? The website purpose is to drive museum engagement in person and digitally. Delving into leading websites, we created a prototype for a playful digital experience. The menu would be placed on an image of the new MAC building itself, inviting the visitor to interact with the physical space before they even arrive. We proposed audio guides for each exhibition room to create a sense of agency and accessibility for the museum visitors in form of the short audio clips. By curating their own routes through the museum, visitors are led to have more meaningful connection with contemporary art. This platform could be accessible on the main museum website or through third-party applications. The most innovative part of our solution, the MAC Pass, allows visitors to gain rewards when exploring the multiple spaces of the physical and digital museum. The passport concept unlocks exclusive content from behind the scenes and offers more collaborative content complementary to the exhibitions. The MAC Pass would encourage guests to return more often to the museum. The implementation of these solutions would make the website a more effective information source, but would go beyond that to create an experience that extends the museum visit into the digital realm as well.
Hello. FIFA approached our team with a question of how to optimize the Arts.Film streaming platform to increase the rates of conversion, as well as look forward to how streaming landscapes may look in 3 to 5 years. In our research and brainstorming, we came up with 3 pillars to our solution. First, we focused on drawing attention to call to action buttons in the golden triangle of the page, enhancing the subscribe button, reducing the number of redirects, and including a monthly to the current yearly subscription. These changes drive subscriber increase. The second was to get Arts.Film on other platforms by integrating letterboxd reviews and ratings using their API. Our feature for Arts.Film to have its own exclusive festival with subscribers new and regular alike also looks to increasing the rates of conversion. We realized that FIFA is in a similar position to tech startups. So innovative and forward-looking Arts.Film was a priority in our strategies. Arts.Film Atelier is our solution to regularly experimenting with streaming as a medium. This section is a sandbox, a blog discussing exploratory Arts.Film features, events and marketing strategies, developed first-party or in conjunction with partners such as hackathon at universities or new VR viewing experiences at Central Fee. To illustrate these solutions in a tangible way, we developed a website to create a vision of Arts.Film, which is at the forefront of innovation. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'm back for the final iteration. So I'd like to invite to join me up here Nathalie Bourdon, Director of Distribution and Market Development from the National Film Board. Nathalie. And some return visitors, Marine Godefroy, directrice communication et marketing et partenariat au MAC. Et Jérôme Recipon, directeur marketing et communication. Merci beaucoup. Au FIFA, j'aurais dû dire au FIFA. Voilà. So we're talking about user experience in this one, which you'd be forgiven for finding it a little intangible sometimes. It's broadly defined as how a user interacts with and experiences a product, a system, or a service. It includes perceptions of utility, ease of use, efficiency, and it's related, broadly speaking, to ergonomics. The study and optimization of user experience as a field in itself really took off as our lives and our world increasingly became based on the internet. So as we navigate through websites, it becomes really important. But in its broadest sense, user experience is actually a going concern and has been a going concern ever since people have been designing things for other people to use. So really broadly speaking, user experience is just that ergonomic sense of how to make something work. Anyway, that's sort of the basic concept. Although in our mandates for this section, we really focused more on sort of the digital idea of user experience, and in a kind of a broad sense. I'll start in, Marine, with you. The museum has a website, but how does an organization whose business is in-person exhibitions, or does rather an organization whose business is in-person exhibitions stop ever to think about the experience of a user on their website? Do you have time to do that when that's not your core business? And how many functions does your website actually have?
Well, actually, I discovered new ones throughout the first year of my tenure at the MAC while trying to make changes for it. The web is, on the one hand, for a museum, limitless curatorial space. On the other hand, most programming teams are used to having their work end up in a physical space. So the questions that are really being asked now, especially after COVID, where basically curators were completely cut off from their usual aboutissement. And basically the only way for the museum to exist during closed periods was through the website. So the government sponsored a lot of projects for virtual exhibits. Artists are coming up with a lot of new stuff to be implemented on websites. This poses all sorts of questions. From a tech standpoint, you get a microsite, which is labeled as a work of art, but you can't really show it on the web because it's already obsolete. It's not responsive, for example. So when half your audience is looking at your website through their phone, you're really degrading a work of art by showing it in a medium that it's not adequate for. On the other hand, does the programming of the virtual MAC have to reflect what's inside our physical walls? Can it be totally different? There's a lot of conversations, I think, that are going to happen in the next few years in all museums about the sort of virtual iteration of their website. So, I mean, usually a museum website, the pages that are the most visited are kind of the boring ones. Right. Times, opening times, what's currently showing, and how do I get there? That's, those are the main pages. So there's a whole question behind what does your website reflect? Is it a portfolio for your museum when you're shopping exhibitions around internationally? Is it a portfolio for curators? Is it a virtual?
Is it an archive?
Yeah, is it an archive? We just built the MAC Répertoire, which is an archive of 8,500 works of art in our collection. So our regular website, not an archive. So what are we really? These are the conversations that we're having now, and the students were sort of asked to we sort of gave them the facts and we said, listen, you know, this is a conversation that we are having now. We don't have an answer. There's no right or wrong answer, I think, but there's definitely a wind of change in terms of what the user experience should be. And also there's a discussion about where do our visitors start their journey? Like, do they start it on our website? Do they discover the artist, the exhibit, and then go to the museum? Or do they just check what time it's open, show up, and pray that we're showing something good?
Right.
Like, there's really a lot of things that have to be brought in from spaces like retail to actually map out our customer or visitor path today, to find out how we can personalize communications with our visitors, how we can acquire, speak to our non-audiences, as well as increase loyalty with our existing audiences. So again, the website, just like the library/cafe, are virtual and physical iterations of spaces where sometimes conflicting activities have to coexist and flourish. So yeah, these are the conversations we're having. I don't have an answer today for you. We did though get some very interesting feedback from the students, and it's a great market research for us, as our main audience is basically from 18 to about 40. So it was really interesting to get direct feedback on users and how they felt about the path that we were offering now. So also discussions about vocabulary.
Yes. Oh yeah, I thought that was interesting too.
We have like a tendency of doing stuff for us, by us, in the sense that we don't really put ourselves in the shoes of a person who knows absolutely nothing about contemporary art. How are they going to react to the headings in our menu?
Well, I thought that I remember from the presentation that we had earlier this week, the example that struck me the most was, we tend to put on our cultural institution websites, we tend to have a heading that says education.
Yeah.
And one of the things that the resident suggested is change the word education to learn with us.
Exactly.
As in, it's not about what we're doing, although we think it is. It's about an invitation, what we're inviting the public to come do in our institution. And that was really actually sort of instrumental for me to understand.
It reflects a total shift in what museum experience used to be, which was a very sort of contemplative affair, to now it's about engagement, it's about dialogue. Like my colleague Yael was saying, a museum is really becoming a space for dialogue where different points of view are exposed. Artists often have social messages to their work, and working with contemporary artists amplifies this quite a bit, because often the work reflects what's going on now in our society. So
I mean, it's potentially endless, right?
Endless.
I want to rebound a little bit on the idea of, you have an experience on the website, moving through the website, and you have an experience in the building, and the question of whether those two experiences should be complementary, whether one should anticipate the other, how you should feel, and is it the same feeling? And Jérôme, c'est sur ce sujet-là que je voulais vous questionner un peu, parce que Art.film, on l'a vu, c'est un cinéma online, c'est toute une expérience, et à côté de ça, il y a le Festival international de films sur l'art. Donc, c'est un événement. Ça se passe en 2 semaines à peu près chaque année. Donc, c'est toute une expérience ergonomique, si on veut dire, toute une expérience esthétique. Est-ce que pour vous, entre ces deux itérations de ce que vous offrez, est-ce que c'était important de créer un lien, ou bien l'opposé? Est-ce que c'était important de bifurquer un peu les deux pour que les gens comprennent que ce n'est pas la même chose et qu'on offre deux choses à la fois?
En fait, c'est sûr que de base, le FIFA est une vitrine qu'on ne pouvait pas laisser de côté, en fait, étant donné l'expertise qui est tenue avec. Et puis parce que Artfilm, à la base, c'est la plateforme qui nous permet de propulser, en fait, en ligne le festival. Donc le lien, en fait, de fait, existe. Ensuite, est-ce que les deux doivent graviter, plus ou moins éloignés l'un de l'autre? On n'a pas de réponse définitive et je pense que c'est une réponse qui va être à géométrie variable, justement avec le temps. Mais c'est sûr que dans un premier temps, je pense que doivent être rapprochés. Vraiment, c'est nécessaire pour donner, on parlait de value depuis le début, pour donner justement une plus-value, parce qu'on le voit, même si on a un marché niche, il reste qu'une seule plateforme de contenu en ligne s'est rendu, je dirais pas, c'est pauvre un peu pour un public, en fait, dans le sens que c'est un mot qui est des fois revenu dans nos discussions avec les étudiants, mais le bundle, en fait, c'est quelque chose dans l'économie du streaming en ce moment qui compte beaucoup, en fait. On voit toutes les grosses plateformes, que ce soit Disney ou peu importe, cesser de rajouter des couches, en fait, de props, en fait, vraiment de faire un bundle de plein de choses pour justement donner de la plus-value, donner de plus en plus d'intérêt au public de venir nous voir. Donc c'est sûr que là, en fait, on serait bête de se priver du FIFA. Après, donc, là où on a un intérêt à les garder collés, c'est justement pour un public géographiquement proche, de pouvoir donner une existence réelle à l'abonnement en ligne, une existence réelle sur place via le festival. Mais c'est sûr qu'après, dans le cadre où on dégéolocalise la plateforme, je veux dire, un abonné en Italie, admettons, qu'est-ce que physiquement on peut lui offrir en termes de festival? Ça, c'est une autre question. Ouais. Donc, c'est vrai que dans un premier temps, je me répète, il y a vraiment un rapprochement qui est très intéressant, qui a de quoi apporter. Après, la vie vraiment en ligne, c'est ça, il faut réfléchir et augmenter cette conversation-là, de savoir de comment augmenter la plus-value, en fait.
Ouais, certainement. On parle ici de la multiplication des plateformes. Donc, il y a plus d'options, il y a plus de façons à consommer le contenu. Nathalie Bourdon de l'ONF. On a parlé du sujet des fast channels. Puis, moi, j'ai pris une petite minute avant de comprendre exactement c'était quoi. Donc, peut-être pour le bénéfice de notre public, pourriez-vous nous décrire brièvement, c'est quoi un fast channel?
Un fast channel, c'est une chaîne spécialisée, habituellement thématique, qui est sur nos postes de télévision, donc qui est sur Internet. Donc, tous les fabricants de télévision intelligentes ont une panoplie de fast channels à nous offrir gratuitement parce que le modèle d'affaires, c'est la publicité. Maintenant, on retourne 20 ans en arrière parce que c'est une programmation continue. Donc, un fast channel, je pourrais dire que c'est un peu un fast food du broadcasting, si on veut, parce que ça coule, ça découle, il y a des bumpers, il y a de la publicité, il y a du branding, mais on consomme ça rapidement. On jump in, on jump out, on jump in, on jump out, et c'est gratuit. Je continue en anglais, en français.
Ça va, comme vous voulez.
Avec la multiplication des plateformes VOD en ce moment, il y a une guerre, comme vous pouvez voir, avec les Netflix de ce monde, les Disney, les Hulu, c'est 8 billions de advertising money dans ces marchés-là en ce moment, et tous se partagent la tarte des subscriptions. Donc, à un moment donné, le consommateur est fatigué d'avoir à choisir son programme, d'avoir à payer une subscription, et comme vous savez, on est en récession. Nous, on essaie de trouver d'autres façons d'aller chercher les consommateurs, les auditeurs, parce qu'on a une réserve de 6000 titres qui sont accessibles actuellement. Et notre stratégie numérique, c'est vraiment d'aller les chercher partout. On est sur Amazon, on est sur Tubi, on est sur Gem, on est partout en non exclusif. Et là, on voudrait vraiment essayer d'aller chercher cette audience-là, parce qu'avec les fast channels, on peut être sur les téléviseurs Sony, On peut être sur LG, on peut être sur tous les téléviseurs intelligents. Ce qui veut dire que le consommateur peut venir nous consommer 2-3 fois. Et ce qui est intelligent là-dedans, dans ce modèle d'affaires-là, c'est qu'on ne dépense pas d'argent en publicité. C'est vraiment les fabricants de télévision et les Roku de ce monde qui poussent le produit. Donc, quand on a un bon produit, on va être consommé, c'est sûr et certain.
So I find this really interesting. The reason it took me a while to get around is because everything that we're doing these days is about curating your own path through something, picking which TV show you want to watch when, how you want to access it, on what device. And so, and you mentioned, NFB has a repository of 6,000 available titles. There's nfb.ca, which is actually where you can go online and see any one of them, and you can search and pick through them. So for me, the fast channel, well, not for me, the fast channel is actually in a passive mode of consumption. Yeah. And that it somehow threw me for a loop. It's almost like I had forgotten that not that long ago, we had cable channels where we just sat down and received content. Yeah. So I think, and it made me think that there's an opportunity there to actually curate a little journey through the content and to tell stories. And I think that the group that you worked with actually clued into that with some of their suggestions of how to actually create those.
A curation of content through young director, which is really brilliant. And thank you very much, team. I spoke to that idea with Claude de Jolicoeur, that is here. He's the commissioner of National Film Board, and he wanted to come and see all the group. And he was like, oh, wow, that's a great idea. Yeah. And but you have to know that at National Film Board, we're mastering the art of user experience. Because you could go on nfb.ca and spend some time. There's free stuff, you have some fun, but you could also go in the theater. You could go. We have VR experience. We have community screening. We are in the libraries. We are in school. We're really trying to reach as many people as possible. So the 6,000 work that we have are discovered, and our creators, the directors that are behind those work, could live through that. Yeah. So we're very happy about that.
Super. Well, I have to draw things to a close, but I want to take a very brief moment to thank you all very much for joining me up here and talking, and thanks to our residents. I'm not going to do a whole bunch of thank yous. I'm actually going to pass the final word on to Zach, if you want to come up and join us.
Yes. As Mark is suggesting, there's a large number of people who have helped make this happen. So I won't get to everyone, but know that you are valued and appreciated, and thank you very much. Thank you particularly to Andrea. You know this already, but we would not be here in this room not without you. Thank you to Anna, thank you to Mark. You really pushed us along in very incredible ways. Thank you to the Fourth Space team and to Michelle, and for everyone who's made this event here today in particular happen. And I want to say a very particular thank you to Joanne and Julie for sharing your expertise throughout the residency. It's been greatly appreciated. And thank you to each and every, I can't see you, you're all hiding behind a box. Thank you to each and every one of you, residents. Your dedication, your enthusiasm, the energy that you bring keeps us all going. Thank you. And with that, I invite you to join us for some refreshments, some mingling. Yeah. Chat with a resident. Grab a spanakopita. The floor is yours.